I see our main man, Mike Gill, in the green room. We're going to talk to Mike Gill in just a second here from 97.3 ESPN. You can give him a follow on X and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. He joins us right now here on Birds 365. Mike, how you doing on this Wednesday morning? Some breaking news, brother. The Cowboys got better today.
Yeah, and I actually was talking about this yesterday on my show because we were looking at the division odds. They're post plus 800 to win the NFC East. We all know the same team hasn't won the division in over 20 years. I think it's exactly 21, going on 21 years now. Dallas was 7-10 last year, and I think in large part they were decimated by injuries. Is that a team that everyone just laughs at because of the Cowboys and the Eagles and the Cowboys thing? Are they secretly better than everybody locally gives them credit for? If that team is mildly healthy last year, are they 10-7 or 7-10? Now they're adding some pieces. They haven't done a great job in free agency. They didn't make a splashy move, but I definitely am intrigued. Now, putting Pickens into Dallas, that just screams some sort of off-the-field drama dripping with it coming to that team soon. But he's a player, and if they're healthy, how much different is that team last year that won only 7 games than the team? They lost their quarterback. I know people don't think Dak is this or that. He's pretty darn good. And when he played,
better than Cooper Rush.
They won 13 games the year before. And, their defense went a stretch early in the season where, they basically lost 4 or 5 starters on that defense. And somehow, with Cooper Rush, kind of got that season back on track. And they were, embarrassing early with that defense. And they kind of got it all together. Matt Eberflus is the new defensive coordinator there. Obviously, the head coaching situation, very unproven. But I think that team is definitely interesting. And because of the audience we're talking to right now, they're not buying it.
Yeah, sure. But I think you're right. I think, 7 wins probably turns into 10 with just a quarterback. So all of a sudden it's a different discussion. Not that they don't have some issues. I don't like what they've done in the backfield, counting on Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. That's probably not going to work out. They're still in the midst of rebuilding their offensive line, which was really the engine of all those 13-win seasons before they would collapse. They've had to rebuild that. You mentioned the defense. They got to stay healthy. I mean, those corners are good, but they're never healthy. They're never healthy together. Deron Bland,
and last year they had no pass rush to speak of because of the injuries that they dealt with early. You lose Micah Parsons for a handful of games. That's one. They had multiple guys hurt up front. You talk about the secondary there. I mean, they had big problems on that defense for a couple of weeks there. Their defense was really decimated by injury.
Well, I think the game's kind of passed. I think they got better at defensive coordinator too. Matt Eberflus is not a good head coach. We've seen that.
Agreed.
But he's a good defensive coordinator. And Mike Zimmer was a good. I think the game has kind of passed him by, and he didn't adjust. So I think they've gotten better.
Head coach is a wild card, right? I mean, they got Schottenheimer. Yeah, he's got.
Yeah. We don't know anything.
Yeah, obviously the head coaching thing. I think for if you're a Dallas fan, was kind of a meh decision there. But
you know what was a mad decision though, guys? Nick Sirianni.
That's true. Schottenheimer had been around a little bit longer and has a little bit more of a track record than Sirianni. So even more of a meh in this situation. Sirianni was just such a wild card. You couldn't even say meh. You're like, I don't even know what to say about this. I don't even know who this guy is. Schottenheimer's been around. His father obviously was very successful.
His name,
But, you look at Dallas, you get the quarterback back. How many wins is that worth? You add now Pickens. Their second receiver spot has been abysmal the last couple of seasons. So now you have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens to deal with. That's something. You mentioned the backfield. Miles Sanders didn't do anything in Carolina. Williams was okay in Denver. Their offensive line. They drafted Booker in the first round. Their line was mediocre at best last year. They've had issues up front. So, okay, what's their offense? Possibly a big play type of offense in the pass game. But are they going to be better defensively? They should be. And this is a team that last year, again, was 7-10, playing most of the season with a backup quarterback. Just adding your starting quarterback should probably flip that number, you would think. So, okay, are they a 10-win team last year that just added George Pickens and, whatever draft choices they have? You mentioned Ezeraku. They added some pass rush there. So I think Dallas is definitely intriguing. And this move today certainly adds. Now, the Eagles, where do they have a question mark? At one of their corner spots, right? That's a big question mark for them. So I definitely think this adds some intrigue to this division. No question about it.
Yeah, I think it does. And your point alone, remember, and the schedule is going to be coming out, May 14th is the day?
Next Wednesday night.
Next Wednesday, yep.
Part of that 21 years that Mike was talking about is the fact that, you play the first place schedule, which is not, what it once was. I think if you look back in the day when when that was a bigger deal, but you're basically talking about 3 games, right? You're talking about, and when that happens, you're always defaulted to first place teams. So you're playing first place teams in those 3 games that differentiate sort of the unbalanced schedule. And that's one of the reasons why there hasn't been a repeat champion in the NFC East. You got to be really good to keep that consistency. That's like a team like Buffalo, however many division titles, that consistency that they've had. That and New England, Indianapolis, with Tom and Peyton back in the day, that consistency hasn't been there in the NFC East. And part of that is the schedule. That's a big part of it. So so if you look at it, you play your division opponents, everybody knows, home and home. They're playing the NFC North this year in their own conference, which was the best regular season division in football. So you have good teams there. Then their conference opponents based on divisional placement. Here's the key: 2, LA Rams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Good teams. And then your interconference opponent based on division placement, Buffalo. And you're playing the AFC West in every team in that division. So the 3 games, you get the Rams, the Bucks, and the Bills. That's what first place does.
And by the way, the AFC West adds in 3 playoff teams: Kansas City, Denver, and LA. So you got.
And so does the NFC North.
And I was going to say,
Detroit,
and then the North. And the Bears, who did not make the playoffs, changed coaches and have really improved their offensive line. That team could be one of those teams that takes a big step forward. So I think all the teams, Washington included, was Washington a byproduct of their schedule last year? And are they able to elevate to that next level when they're playing? We counted this up yesterday or last week. Washington won 1 game last year against a playoff team. They beat Philadelphia. Not 1 win they had was against a team that made the playoffs last year. So would they win 12 games? And you had 1 playoff team against
until they made the playoffs.
Yes, but to get there
on the road in Detroit.
To your point, though, they did have an easier road.
You have to now navigate 17 weeks of playing teams that are playoff quality. Last year, they won 11 games against non-playoff teams. So that's the big challenge is, okay, in the NFL, these teams come out of nowhere every year. Wow, I didn't see that coming. Well, okay, the schedule is not the same every year. So one year you're good, the next year you kind of drop back, unless you're a team that has the staying power. We'll find out if Washington has the staying power, because now each and every week their level of competition is going to go up.
Mike, last week you showed up to this show. You were geared up to the nines, coming with ammo and gasoline to pour all over the show. And we had people talking about it for a couple of days. All right. Now the Cowboys add George Pickens. where you got the Eagles in this NFC East? You're not going to tell me they're not the top dog, are you, in this NFC East? How much has the gap closed with the Eagles, the Commanders, and now the Cowboys?
Well, I think the gap is closed. No question about it. You've lost 5 key players on defense. You don't just walk onto the field missing 5 guys that you had help you win a Super Bowl last year and then deem we're as good, if not better. That all needs to play out. If you're asking me in May, no, you're not nearly as good. I think Washington has certainly made improvements. They didn't lose a boatload of their depth chart. I mean, they just didn't. Dallas is, they're one of the problems with Dallas last year, I think, was the injuries for them. When you have injuries, it's going to decimate a season. And they had one of those years early on in the season they just could not recoup from with the defensive injuries. You'll lose your starting quarterback. I don't know what you expect from a team when you lose your starting quarterback. I know people don't like Dak or don't think Dak is all that good. When you lose a player of that caliber and then the drop-off is Cooper Rush, that's going to basically ruin your season. So I think both those teams on May 6th, 7th here today, May 7th, have closed the gap. Have they passed? No. Closing the gap and passing are 2 different things. I heard John pontificating before I came on about someone saying Makuba will basically seamlessly jump in there. There's no evidence of him being as good or better than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Well, that's just unfair to expect.
I love when people leave the team and then it's automatically assumed that the next guy is going to just be as good, if not better. There's no evidence that any player right now is going to be able to produce at what Milton Williams gave you, Josh Sweat gave you, Darius Slay gave you. And even if 2 of those guys, okay, I'll play along. 2 guys are as good or better than the guys you lost, you still have downgrades at multiple other spots. And that's fair to say, and it's okay to say on May 7th, because that's what training camp is for, to see how these guys have improved or how they acclimate to the NFL game. But on May 7th, when you're asking me, I think the teams have closed the gap, but not passed.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's incredible. I just went through this, right? Because the draft is over, and I said, all right, let's take a look. And as the Cowboys proved, and Howie always says, that talent acquisition season is not over. The Eagles will still do more things. But the vast majority of it is over. So you look at where they are, and you just brought up some of those names. You got to be incredibly optimistic to assume cast of thousands, pick whoever your favorite is. Jalen Hunt, Azeez Ojulari, Josh Uche, even throw Bryce up in there, although he's nobody's favorite, is going to play at the level of Josh.
Think about that. This is a guy you gave, $50+ million to, and your anticipation for him is nothing.
I know. Well, I by the way, I disagree with that. I think he's the most proven pass rusher the Eagles have, which is not a good thing. Part of the reason
for 1 year, he was definitely. I mean, Now you say the most proven, he only did it really 1 year.
Well, he did it 2 years, but on a very limited role. He was top 5 in pressure rate for 2 consecutive years as a rotational player.
Yeah,
but he did it for 2 years.
I think it's fair to be objective in this situation and certainly say, do you have some players with some ceiling? Yeah, Jalen Hunt can be. Nobody knows. I mean, listen, the guy was playing safety in the Ivy League a handful of years ago.
I think they're different discussions, Mike. I'm talking immediacy. If you're talking about 2027 or 2026, yeah, I'll listen to that. Maybe I think it's logical to say with Darius Slay, at some point you got to move on. He's 34 years old.
Yeah.
The old adage, better to give up on a player a year early than a year late.
I think what I'm saying is, listen, Darius Slay, yes, it's probably smart to give up on him a year early or even now. And he might not have been good this year than he was last year. But there's no evidence that the player replacing him will give you what he gave you last year. So he might not have given you what he gave you last year, but do you need a player of what he did last year's magnitude in order to be successful at that spot? And if you have a downgrade there, what does that mean for your defense? You got a guy on one side who essentially is not going to get the ball thrown his way. The other guy is going to have to be pretty serviceable. And we don't know that Kaylee Ringo or Adoree Jackson is going to be at the same level that Darius Slay gave you last year. And if Slay was back here, he may not have been at the same level that he was last year.
Yeah, that's fair. But you know, if I'm a betting man, I'm saying whoever your favorite is, whether it's Ringo, and I'm a big Ringo upside guy myself, or Adoree Jackson, the odds of them giving you the performance Slay gave you last year are pretty minimal. That's what it comes down to. Now, long term, maybe it works. The Makubu versus, I don't even know if he's going to beat out Sidney Brown. Never mind play at the level of CJ Gardner-Johnson.
I saw this smile on Vic Fangio's face when they drafted Andrew Makubu. It was like, yeah, man, I got the guy that I wanted.
Well, no, he's a bad. If I'm, well, he was really excited about JAKIB Campbell, but I don't even know when he's going to play. Never mind the role. Then you talk about the role because he's, you know, he had March labrum surgery. So if he's here for week 1, I'd be astonished. So it's going to be into the season. And hopefully it's not a redshirt year. And then you got to figure out, all right, how are they going to use him? And again, long term, a lot of upside.
Yeah. Well,
short term,
the one guy you could have met fire with on George Pickens would have been CJ Gardner-Johnson, though, and now he is gone. So I was thinking, somebody put that in the comments. John Secunda. John, good take by you. That would have been a good guy to have versus George Pickens.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of trash talking in that spot. But as you mentioned, John, there's so many. The Eagles are replacing guys who have. They're replacing guys. Darius Slay, a multiple-time Pro Bowler, All-Pro. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, multiple 6 interception seasons here in Philadelphia. Josh Sweat, steady as can be. Milton Williams. I mean, you're replacing guys.
Milton Williams, and I'm a Moro Ajomo guy. Milton Williams, according to PFF, was the #1 interior pass rusher in football last season. Now, a lot of that had to do with Jalen Carter playing next to him. But nonetheless, you really think Moro Ajomo or elevated snaps for Jordan Davis is going to be the #1 interior pass rusher?
Well, and that's the thing. You are replacing 4 players who had a track record, who have given you 4 or more years of pretty steady service with guys who could be better, but we have no evidence of. Jalix Hunt, Moro Ajomo, Kaylee Ringo, and Andrew Makuba, and any other player has no track record to sit. Now, you could give an opinion and say, it's my opinion that Jalix Hunt will do better than Josh Sweat. And that's your opinion, and you're not right or wrong. It's just your opinion. We won't know until it happens. Jalix Hunt has no evidence of anything. This is like Nolan Smith. 2 years ago, he gave you nothing. You might have said, I think there's more in Nolan Smith. And he got 6.5 sacks. And now you're excited. There's some people that think Nolan Smith goes from 6.5, to a double-digit sack guy. That would be something that would him be taking a huge step forward. So the Eagles need 4 players to take a big step forward. And again, even if 2 of them do, that means you're now deficient in 2 areas that you were pretty solid last year.
Even if you go further down.
Like, and by the way, you're also assuming, I guess, that Nakobe Dean just goes seamlessly right back in and plays at a high level with a pretty serious injury.
Yeah. Well, it's a big I think a lot of people think JAKIB Campbell's going to be out there.
Which is another issue because, Mike, you've brought up all the times that, how many players have they lost on defense? And you would think, okay, the first-round draft pick you use on defense would be replacing one of those guys, but it actually doesn't look like that, Mike. It actually looks like he's replacing a guy that was returning to the defense in Nakobe Dean, which opens up another hole on the defense that you have to fill with other players to step up. So it is a very interesting spot where this defense is. They're really putting a lot of hope in Vic Fangio, man. Vic Fangio better be on his game again.
Well, Vic will be fine, but
Brandon Graham.
Yeah, but you need good players, John. He hasn't had a number one.
Well,
defense
no, that's what I mean.
You know?
I wouldn't blame it on Vic, but yeah, they're asking too much of Vic if you expect the number one defense.
Yeah, well, Brandon Graham said, I think yesterday, he said one reason why he thinks the defense will be fine is because no turnover in the coaching staff. You know, that was what he, the year before, remember he made the comment of they had coaches in the wrong spots. They didn't have the right coaches. This year, hey, Brandon, you're gone. Your team's lost 4 or 5 guys. Why do you think that because the coaching staff is intact. We haven't lost the coaches. So the messaging is the same. Obviously, Brandon has enough trust in what he heard last year from this group of coaches that he thinks these guys will be able to translate onto the field with success. And that's a positive thing to hear. And he's right. I mean, the year before they lost, they had 2 different coordinators and then basically wiped out the whole staff and brought a new staff in here. So that's something, the stability from that coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball is at least a positive to think that some of these guys can step in and possibly not miss a beat, but there's no giving.
No. What do you guys think of the Giants? I mean, I think obviously the Cowboys, the Commanders, and the Eagles are a step ahead, but I'll tell you what, that Giants team's not bad. You look at that defensive line, you look at that overall defense. Again, and I'm not here to tell you that the Giants are going to be a playoff team or any of those things, but I do think they're going to elevate a little bit from the dead this year. What do you say, Mike?
They are, by the way, in all of the NFL, plus 3,500. They are the longest shot in the entire league to win their division. But what you're saying is somewhat accurate, is when you play the Giants on a Sunday, they're going to struggle offensively, you would imagine, to score, 21 to 24 points. But their defense should keep them in game. They're going to give you a pass rush. So when you play them, at least you're going to know you're going to have to execute. Because if you don't execute, you're going to get an ugly game, 17-14, something to that effect. Because that defense should be bringing it, man. They've got some pass rush, interior pass rush, outside pass rush. They're going to be bringing it from all over the place. Are they going to win 7 to 9 games? Most likely not. But there's a difference between winning a lot of games and then being a pain in the ass, being a team that can catch you on a given week. That might be where the Giants fall in now, is they can catch you on a week. Your offense might not be good, but you're not good every single week. There's one of those random weeks where you might score 28 to 30 points. And with that defense, they have a shot to kind of hang around in games. And in this league, you let teams hang around, they can, a fumble return for a touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown, a broken play, a big play. So, yeah, I don't think that they've improved to playoff levels. They're probably in the 6 to 8 win range, maybe somewhere in there. But definitely defensively, they're moving in the right direction with that defense.
Yeah, they got a good defense.
Well, I always say, you can talk yourself into stuff with the NFL because all NFL teams have really good players. Every single one of them, from top to bottom. Every single one of them has really, really good players. And with the Giants, it starts with their defensive front. And you add Abdul Carter to already. You have Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. And you had Darius Alexander as well, who I liked in the draft. They signed Paulson Adebo. I think he's a good corner if he stays healthy. They got some good stuff going on defensively, but they don't have a quarterback. I mean, that's the problem. Now, Russell Wilson will give them competency, and they'll be able to line up and run plays. But at this stage of his career, I think everybody's seen enough. And they're all and their front office is a mess and has been a mess for years. And that's difficult to overcome. So I don't take the Giants seriously, but to Mike's point, anybody in the NFL, they all have good players. So if you sit there and go, boy, how are you going to block Burns and Lawrence?
Yeah, right.
Carter
Well, and now
Alexander?
they have, Russell Wilson isn't the same player, no question about it, but he's at least a
No,
professional.
but he's better than,
You can line up and run plays. Yeah.
Yes. Last year, you're not running a professional. Tommy DeVito is not a professional. I mean, He's just not a capable week-to-week starter. Last year, you're running guys like him out, or 2 years ago, he's playing for you almost every week. I mean, last year, you just don't have a capable quarterback. And now you have a guy, yes, he's limited from what the player that he was in his heyday, but at least he's a professional. He took a team to the playoffs last year. I mean, could the Giants be similar to the Steelers last year, where they win like 9, 10 grimy games? You know, Russell Wilson didn't have a great year last year, but if you look at it, I mean, you know, he protects the ball. He just kind of like nickels and dimes his way down the field. You get the ball into Neighbors' hands. He's the stud if he can keep his head on straight, man. Neighbors is a handful.
He is a stud. And
yeah.
Neighbors, I should have mentioned Neighbors is going to be a great player if they ever figure out quarterback. Now, the problem is, you know what's going to happen, Mike. They took a quarterback in the first round. They're going to be a bad team, and they're going to say at some point, whether it's week 4 or week 8, that they got to get the rookie on the field because they're not going anywhere. Jackson Dart's going to go out there, and it's going to be a shit show, at least early on. That's what's going to happen to the Giants. I guarantee it.
Well, the schedule comes out next week. You know, on Thursday, you'll be breaking it down. How many wins, how many losses. We'll see how it sets up for them to make that happen.
Can I make a PSA, by the way? Because I already get it. Please, people, don't send me schedule leaks from random people. Please, I beg of you.
PSA.
Hey, February 10th.
I beg of you.
February 10th, I predicted it will be Eagles-Bears.
A lot of people are going Eagles.
Yeah. Well, I said apparently Adam Schefter said yesterday that he's hearing it's the Bears Eagles. I said on February 10th that the Bears will be the team that the league is going to try to prop up with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. Now that's the team that I think that the league is. They're the Lions from a couple of years ago, where the Lions got that Thursday night game. And I think the Bears are going to be that team this year. I think that Bears team, you know, much like the Cowboys, that I say like the Cowboys, they last year were just a disaster on the offensive line. They targeted that and fixed it. The Cowboys did not target. Well, they did in the draft, but that Bears team definitely last year what the Bears did was they went out and got weapons for Williams. Now they've got offensive line help for Williams. So we'll see if that takes them to another
I think the Eagles, I'll say right now, I think the Eagles are 1-0. That's a nice matchup for the Eagles on week 1. 1-0. There you go.
Get the Bears, I think I do think the Bears are a pretty solid team, but I agree with you, John. Mike, I want to ask
their defense was pretty solid last year. They just couldn't block, and Williams was all over the place. He was so erratic. But they had some weapons. Now, I mean, the weapons they had were a little. They brought in Keenan Allen. He, you know, he's not the same. He's not there anymore. But last year they had Keenan Allen. They drafted the receiver from LSU, whose name's escaping me right now. They had Swift in there. So obviously
Rome Odunze.
Yes, there you go.
Player,
DJ Moore's a great local kid, the Philly
and
kid.
The tight end Kmet's a good player. So they went out
Loveland. They got Loveland.
They
drafted
Loveland.
Loveland.
Got Loveland. Exactly. That was a surprise. They drafted him 10th. But they went out and got skill players last year, thinking that Caleb Williams would have all these skill players and he would overcome the offensive line. You cannot come the offensive line deficiencies in this league.
Well, the
Mike,
problem is with the Bears, sorry to interrupt, but the problem with the Bears is, yes, they did address the offensive line, but, you know, they didn't address it enough. So they might go from disaster to mediocre. You know, Joe Thuney is a good player, out of position in the Super Bowl, but he's aging. Drew Dahlman, good player. Jonah Jackson, really the history of Ben Johnson with him, did not have a good season. You know, Darnell Wright is terrible. Braxton, their tackles remain terrible.
Terrible.
And the quarterback, I mean, immense talent, but, you know, he doesn't know how to play the game yet. So we have to see what Ben Johnson does as far as elevating him.
That's the big thing, is getting him with Ben Johnson, an offensive mind. You bring bring him into Eberflus, a defensive-minded coach, disaster. They fire the coach. They got a new coach who's, you know, flying by the seat of his pants over there. So now at least they have some stability with an offensive-minded guy. Now we'll find out if Williams can actually play. But
I'll tell you what, Jalen on defense, they made Kyler Gordon, you know, they have one of the best slot corners in football. Jalen Johnson might be the best cornerback nobody talks about. They have a lot of talent on defense.
Been hearing his name for a while, right? The Eagles liked him. ultimately, because everybody's talking about it's going to be Eagles, Lions, or Eagles, Commanders that first game of the year. But, I said that the Bears would be kind of a wild card team.
1-0. Philadelphia 1-0.
Mike, I want to ask you about the Eagles offense. We talked about the defense last week. We started off with talking defense today after the Cowboys acquired Pickens. I don't want to pollute the question, but me and John had a long conversation yesterday about the Eagles offense. What are your expectations for the Eagles offense in 2025, and how much differently or similar will it look to the 2024 Eagles offense?
Honestly, how do we answer that question with Kevin Batula being the guy? He's never called plays before, but he's been here a long time. I mean, what influence does he have on this offense? Who could really answer that question? I mean, does he want to feature A.J. Brown more? Does he want to get Smith more involved? Does he want to scale back the Barkley usage? Does he want to get his tight end involved more? Does he have more RPO? Does he have less RPO? Does he want to feature Jalen Hurts' throwing ability more? We have really no idea what Kevin Batula is thinking. You would think that the confines of the offense would be similar, but that doesn't mean the rhythm of the play calling is similar, right?
Right.
You, like John, I think you've talked about this before with Shane Steichen. Just had a good rhythm. He was a really good play caller in certain situations. He just, so you could have, hey, here's a play sheet and here's a play sheet, same exact play sheet. And the two guys call the game completely different, even though they're calling off the same play sheet. So I don't know what to expect from Kevin Batula, but I would say this: if I'm the Eagles, I'm making a conscious effort to try to scale back Barkley a little bit after I just gave him an extension for 2 more years. I can't use him the same usage that I did last year and then expect him to get to the end of that contract as the same player. So to me, that's the first thing that I'm looking at. And then the Eagles fan, well, you need Barkley. You better hope that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are as good as you think they are. And I think we all think they're that good. But you better use them more if you want Barkley to get to the end of that deal.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think the Eagles are riding Saquon Barkley until he breaks down. And I think they're fine with it and say, hey, if he doesn't make it to the second year, they're like, all right, thanks. It's well worth it still. I just think, now teams are going to adjust and try to stop Saquon Barkley at all costs. So they might be forced to throw it more. The defense is not as good, so they might be forced to throw it more.
Right? That shouldn't be a problem.
No, it shouldn't be. But at times last year it was. We had that discussion yesterday. Everybody got upset about. Zander was talking about it pre-show. Tom Brady talking about it against Green Bay. Everybody forgets how bad the passing game was against Green Bay. How bad the passing game was against the Rams. Everybody forgets. Mm-hmm. They persevered, but it wasn't good. There's no reason it shouldn't be good.
Still the best line of the year is Jalen Hurts. Is that what you all wanted to see?
Yeah, well, and that's
you think that was the best line of the year, Mike? I don't think that was the best line of the year.
Oh, come on, man. He just waited to say.
Well, you throw 290 yards versus Steelers, and you got to shut all the media members up. Why do you even give a shit what the media says? Come on, that was a bad line.
It was delivered. It was delivered perfectly. It was delivered perfectly. But it's like akin to, I talked about with Dallas Goedert. He didn't have a big year in the passing game. You've won games without him. But when push came to shove in the playoffs, he made some of the big catches and big plays. So it's almost like the Eagles have these things in their back pocket that they don't have to show you all the time, but they're there when they need them the most.
I'm sorry, I don't believe that. It turned out that way. That's the causation correlation argument. It turned out that way. That doesn't mean you can just pull it out of your pocket.
I agree with that. My point is, do you have a player that is talented enough to make the play in the moment when he hasn't been called on all year? Can he keep his focus even though I'm not getting used over the long haul?
I think Jahan Dotson did that in the playoffs. Jahan Dotson did that. But to the point, I brought this up, Not to the point, because every NFL game, and that's people get mixed up what I'm trying to say here. I'm not trying to point back to the Rams game and say, well, if Jalen Carter doesn't get that pass rush on third down, the Eagles' season is over. It's over. The Bender slipped. Higbee's wide open. It's going to walk into the end zone if Jalen Carter doesn't have that pass rush. I don't point that out to say I pointed out to say that's the NFL. Big time player made a big time play, deserves credit for it. I'm pointing it out, Mike. What would the narrative? What would we be talking about every day in this offseason if the Rams walked off of that field and stole a win? All you would be talking about is how bad the passing game was. 65 net passing yards. That doesn't go away because Jalen Carter made a play. It does go away in people's minds. I guarantee it doesn't go away to the Philadelphia Eagles because they will be spending this entire offseason trying to improve the passing game.
Well, it's like everything in sports. I mean, when the Golden State Warriors nail 45% of their threes, they win. They don't take a lot of twos. They're not a good.
And when the Celtics take 65 threes and miss them all, they lose.
Yeah, they shot 60 threes. They missed 45, and the Knicks hit 45% of their threes. And I said, as a Celtics fan, am I worried? I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm just saying, if I was a Celtics fan, am I be worried? No. Am I missing 45 threes again? The point is, they're not a team that is good at or takes a lot of twos. What they're good at is shooting a lot of threes. What the Eagles were good at is running the ball, getting big chunks of yards in the pass game when necessary. Not a lot of yards in the pass game, just big chunks of yards when necessary. So these teams, the Celtics shot 60.
I get my pushback there would be it wasn't necessary against the Rams. Yeah, it
in
was
the end,
necessary.
no, but in a different, if they don't get the sack, yes. I mean, I think one of the more perplexing things about this offense is you have all this money invested into your wide receivers, and they're certainly not maximizing the two talents that they have at that position.
That might be a bigger question for Howie Roseman than it is for Kevin Petula. I mean, if you're Kevin Petula, you're looking, look at the best running back in football that just set a historic pace and the number one offensive line in football. I'm not changing a damn thing.
Yeah.
Howie can worry about the $60 million going to the receiver.
It's Howie put together the best roster in the NFL last season. He did his job.
Yeah, he did.
And the coaching staff utilized them to win games. They did their job. But yeah, they're two different jobs in a lot of circumstances. Now, the off the field stuff comes into it like long term. If you have 3 consecutive seasons of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith not getting the football, maybe it starts to, on a more consistent basis, maybe it starts to bubble up.
I just wonder if you're Jeffrey and Howie and you made the investment in those guys, and then the big picture is, hey, we're paying these guys. Why are they not a bigger part of it? I hope that that's not the way they're looking or approaching this. But you do have to wonder, you're saying, hey, do we need this investment in these 2 players? I mean, is that necessary for what we're doing here? I think it's all encompassing that, they draw so much attention. How much does it cost for attention? You know what I mean? Like, we're paying you extra money because
that's where all the bullshit A.J. Brown trade rumors came out of, because nobody looks at the contract. So they're not looking at the contract and realize, hey, you can't trade this guy. But B, they just look at the situation and say, well, why do you need an all-pro receiver if you don't throw the football? That's what they're saying.
Right.
The same type of thing. And people in New England were trying to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. Again, not looking at the contract. But when the contract eases up, maybe it does become a prophecy.
Yeah. At
that point, because if you're not going to use the all-pro receiver, like an all-pro receiver, but remember the shelf life with Saquon Barkley is small.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, it just is. You can't keep up this pace. History has proven that. As
And
a
even
running
if
back.
and even like Adrian Peterson, who played well into his 30s, wasn't the same player in his
No,
mid 30s as he was at
Yeah.
his height. So, yeah, you
Yeah.
might have Saquon Barkley, but it's not the guy that helped you win a Super Bowl level of Saquon Barkley. So, yeah, you're going to have to go back to what Xander's question was. You're going to have to evolve, I think, this offense into start relying on more of your weapons that you've invested in. So, hey, I've invested, and investment is long-term. Investment isn't I'm making my money now. It's long-term. So, okay, I've invested all this money. Now I'm going to get more out of you this year. I'm going to get more out of you this year. I'm going to get less out of this guy. Now you would say, well, then why'd you just pay Saquon Barkley? I think it's a fair question of the wonder. I think it's admirable that the organization rewarded him for the season that he had, but you could make an argument that it was unnecessary as a business decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
Fair?
disagree. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I thought you
All
said
right,
you
Mike, final
disagreed.
question. What'd you say?
I thought John said he disagreed.
Well, the business decision, but to me, it's separate things. From a football perspective, it's different. And
Yeah.
that,
No, that's what I'm
unfortunately,
saying. Yeah.
but yeah, I'm a realist too. I mean, business part of it comes. I talk about it all the time. It comes into it.
The goodwill that the team showed there, probably big picture, is as beneficial as maybe the hurt on the business end of it, which is probably minimal.
Yeah. And they're a team that will, and look, nobody wants to complain when you're winning 16 out of 17 games. That helps as well. So if you lose, and you saw it bubble up in the Carolina after the Carolina game, which is a game they should have lost, but they won because Xavier Leggett can't catch the football. And they won the game, and everybody was like, it was like they lost the game in the locker room after. That was the what's wrong with the offense passing quote from A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith that same day, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Jalen Hurts, all of them. It was like a loss from their perspective because they played so poorly.
Which is good, though. Which is good. Like to understand that there are certain opponents that aren't at your level, and even though you beat them, the lack of satisfaction in how you performed in that game is admirable. To say, hey, they're professionals. You know what I mean? Well, they're professionals. We beat them. There are professionals that aren't on your level, even though they're professionals.
That's
Mike,
true too.
You can answer this question, and before I let you go, in four team names. Give me the NFC East rankings this year as you see it on May 7th. You obviously reserve the right to change at some point in the offseason.
Oh, I would say it's pretty much the same right now as it finished last year. Philly, Washington, Dallas. You said the NFC East or the NFC?
Yeah, NFC East. NFC East.
Yeah. Philly, Washington, Dallas, Giants, but probably tighter. I don't know that Philadelphia wins as many games. I don't think Washington wins as many games. I think Dallas wins more games, and I think the Giants win more games. So the two teams at the top, I think, come back to the pack, and the two teams at the bottom come closer to the pack, but still probably now the history would suggest I'm going to be wrong about this. The Giants are plus 3,500. I don't think they are. Every year there's a team that goes from last to first. I don't think the Giants are going to be that team. So I'll keep the Giants in the basement. Dallas next, but probably with a better record than 7-10. I think Washington's worse than 12 wins, and I think Philly drops down from 13. So I'll keep it exactly the same as it was at the end of last year.
Interesting. That'd be the first time in 20-plus years we have a repeat winner.
A repeat champion, but also possibly, how many times has it ever been a repeat order?
Yeah, I don't know if that's ever. I don't have to look deeper.
And they're getting off to a good start, 1-0. If they get the Chicago Bears,
we'll see. I think it's gonna be a tough game, but good stuff there, Mike. Great show today, as always, brother. We'll be tuned in on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you guys follow him on YouTube. Go and subscribe to his channel at Mike Gill Show, and follow him everywhere as well at Mike Gill Show. Mike, thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
Thanks, bud.
Mike Gill joining us here on Birds 365. Great job by Mike Gill. Boy, I'll tell you what, Johnny Mac. Mike has done a good job the last couple of weeks coming in here, taking a big wooden spoon and stirring up the pot, Mike.
I don't think he's stirring up the pot. I don't think I'm stirring up the pot. I think we're just being honest.
Our viewers are the ones who dictate whether the pot is stirred.
Yeah, I mean, the assumption that, again, I've said this pretty consistently for people that have listened. the assumption that if you ran it back exactly on defense and somehow, you could fit Milt Williams and Josh Sweat and Darius Slay and CJ Gardner-Johnson into it and just rolled it back, it was very, very unlikely. Not to mention, we didn't even talk about Rodgers and Burks and guys like that, Brent and BG. If you could roll it all back, it's very unlikely you would have had the same season, just because it's difficult to do.
Yeah, right.
Special is special, and they had a special season defensively last year. The assumption you're replacing all those guys is even less likely. And the way they played last season, less likely. So be prepared. That's all I'm saying.
Let's get the